Hey there, bibliophiles and those raising bibliophiles. Without ratings and warning labels, knowing which books are appropriate for your children to read is like navigating wild terrain without a map and a compass. I don't know about you, but I have been burned more than once handing my child a book that I thought was clean and appropriate for them to read. I'm a fellow mom, educator, reading specialist, and literary enthusiast trying to find great books for my children and yours to read. So if you're looking for a real review from a mom with a biblical worldview, then welcome and enjoy this week's book review. So this week's book review is Spies, Europa by James Ponti. This is book 7 in the Spies series. If you have followed me for a little while, you know that I absolutely love this series, and this is the most recent book. This book picks up pretty much right after kind of the end of book 6. The city spies are now living in London after the destruction of their home. Clementine and Annie are starting new lives, kind of separate from everyone else. They're in this like protection service program, kind of like a witness protection program. All are really trying to begin again and put their lives kind of back in order now that Umbra's leader, Lucian Allard, is in a high security prison. However, even from within the walls of prison, he begins his next plan that leads to his eventual escape. So before I go any further, I'm just going to read a little bit of the opening of this book just to kind of give you a taste, if it's been a while, of the writing style, if this is the first one that you're seeing of the book series before you kind of go back and look at the others. And I do encourage you to go back and look at my other reviews for the other books in this series. But anyhow, before I get too far ahead of myself, let me just read a little bit of the beginning. Lucian Allard was in a hurry, which was never a good thing to be in prison. He took a deep breath to calm himself and looked at his reflection in the mirror, or at least what passed for one in HMP Belmarsh. Actual mirrors weren't allowed because they could be shattered, and their shards used as weapons. Instead, he stared into a dull metal rectangle the size of a book that made his face look like it was part of an abstract painting. How had he fallen so far? As the leader of the global crime syndicate Umbra, he was used to traveling the world in style, eating gourmet meals and sleeping in one of his luxury homes. Now he subsisted on prison food and spent more of his hours confined to a cell that was 6 feet by 10 feet. He was in a hurry, all right, a hurry to get out. "Guard," he called through the small slot in the door. The problem was that no one had ever escaped from the high security unit at Belmarsh. The HSU was the prison within a prison where the United Kingdom housed its most dangerous criminals. Allard had counted no fewer than 20 gated doors, many with built-in time delays, that he had passed through to reach the cell. Getting out would be virtually impossible. Virtually. "Guard," he called out again impatiently. "Settle down," bellowed the corrections officer named Blayton, as his ruddy face appeared in the opening. "What do you want?" "I want dinner at the Wolseley," Allard replied. "Steak au poivre, but I guess I'll have to settle for a tepid cup of Earl Grey here in the spur." Belmarsh may have been the most notorious prison in Britain, but it was still British. Afternoon tea was practically considered a basic human right. 5 minutes, the guard instructed as he unlocked the door to let him out. "That's not even enough time for it to steep properly," Allard replied. "Maybe not at the Wolseley," replied Blayton with a chuckle, "but here at the HSU, it's the exact right amount of time." Allard smirked. "You know you're a barbarian, and according to the missus, my communication skills aren't what they should be." Allard laughed as he stepped into the corridor. "We are all works in progress." Despite their notorious past, the 14 inmates in the HSU tended to get along well with the guards, a necessity when spending so much time in such tight quarters. Because of this, the officers were only allowed to work in the unit for 3 years before being transferred to another part of the prison. This was to ensure that none developed too close a bond with the men they were supposed to be supervising. The cells were laid out in 4 spurs, joined together at a common area with a small television and a kitchenette that had a microwave and a toaster. This was necessary because HSU inmates were not allowed in the cafeteria, where they could interact with prisoners from the general population. Rather than a mug, Lucian had a paper cup, and instead of a kettle, there was a dispenser that provided water that was warm, if not exactly hot. "We're out of sugar," said Allard, holding up an empty bowl. "There's more in the cupboard," answered Blayton. Allard opened the cabinet to reveal 3 bags of sugar. He took the one marked with a small blue dot and turned his body ever so slightly so that it blocked the guard's view while he refilled the bowl. As he did, he dipped his fingers into the crystals and pulled out a phone. He'd paid £15,000 to have it smuggled into the prison, making this quite likely the most expensive cup of tea in history. He deftly tucked the phone between his upper arm and body, which obscured it from view a few moments later, when he returned to his cell. Allard walked slowly because no one was ever in a rush to get back inside, and he didn't want to arouse suspicion. "I don't suppose I can sit outside and drink this on the patio?" he asked. "You mean the concrete slab surrounded by steel mesh?" Blayton replied as he reopened the cell for him. "You know the answer to that. Can't blame a man for trying." During this time, atop the most wanted lists of law enforcement agencies around the world, Allard had been so elusive and mysterious that he was known as La Fontaine, the ghost. But he was simply inmate SS 1230AA, and it had been a titanic fall from power, and in return he planned to exact revenge on the people responsible for causing it. Later that night, well after lights out, he slipped the phone out of his new hiding place in the mattress and sent a single two-word text that set in motion his plan to bring about retribution and freedom. Activate Lazarus. So as the action in the story begins, there are cryptic messages kind of leaving this high security prison, and everyone is assuming them to be from Allard, despite their searching of his cell and they couldn't find the phone. The messages obviously begin to hint towards various bombings that are going to take place. It starts with one bomb that they uncover in Paris, but soon there's going to be more of those as the story goes on. The bulk of the book really centers around sort of uncovering these locations for these specific bombs, mainly to stop Allard and his henchmen before thousands of lives are lost. The team must split up, but they also have to work together. So they have to split up and be in separate cities, but they also end up having to work together in all of that to kind of see how things are going to uncover and unfold, to figure out the clues in each particular location, because there is a connection between them. In the end, they do end up being able to stop all the bombings, but what they didn't see is that all of that was part of Allard's plan for escape. So if his escape actually wasn't enough, Allard is set on getting hold of Clementine in order to seek revenge on her because he ended up in prison to begin with. So towards the end of the story, as the characters are starting to feel like this sense of failure for his escape, they also begin to realize that that wasn't all, that he's actually after Clementine. So the team, with the help of True, they managed to kind of locate her hiding place in order to stop Allard. However, when they arrive, he has already taken Clementine. Sydney is one character throughout the story who really likes Clementine the least, and she is generally the one kind of provoking things, thinking that she is secretly still doing things and can't be trusted. And at the end of the novel, she is the one who ultimately comes full circle, and she's the one who manages to save Clementine from Allard. But Allard does end up eluding them one last time. Throughout the story, True is also conducting these things called tutorials to kind of help the spies decide once and for all if they want to join MI6. So winning the rounds of her tutorials results in getting to wear this like prized Rolex, and the characters have to decide formally to either continue their MI6 training or not. Of course, they all decide that they are going to accept it. And Annie, who wasn't sure she wanted to be a part of everything at the end, ends up showing up and kind of becomes a part of the group. And her new code name becomes London because they're city spies. And so all of them are named after a city. I do want to encourage you to go to my website at holdingsteadfastreaders.com. You're going to get a few more details there in my written review that you're not going to see here on this video, quotes, particular things that stood out. So I definitely want to encourage you to go to holdingsteadfastreaders.com to get that added information. It's really hard to kind of tell if Ponte is really done with this series. He's definitely, I think, left it open for an additional books because we have Allard has gotten away. We have Annie kind of joining in. We have the city spies committing more to this MI6 training. The book is 386 pages, but if your reader has read any of the other ones, they're going to fly through these pages. It'll seem like it was but a moment. The action, the suspense, the puzzles as they're trying to figure those out along with the characters. So if you're looking for a great book series that's really great for middle grade readers, it has great themes about families and friendships, endurance, even humility, then this is definitely a series that I would add to your must-read list for your reader. And so that kind of brings us to a close with City Spies. We'll see if there happens to be any more of those in the future. But a great series overall. So if you're looking for something, book 1 through 7 for your reader, I definitely encourage you to go to my website, holdingsteadfastreaders.com. You're going to find all those reviews linked together on one page. This one will be at the bottom, so it'll start with the first one at the top and work its way down from there. And I hope that's helpful to you as parents who are trying to find great things for your children to read. And I hope that you'll join me next week for another book review.